Chappy's on Church is a restaurant located in Nashville, Tennessee, and the focus of Season 5, Episode 15 of Kitchen Nightmares. There have been quite a few contentious owners on Kitchen Nightmares over the years, but even among the more contentious owners, most of them by the end of the episode have some kind of, come to Jesus moment where they accept the changes and agree to follow Gordon's advice going forward. Of course, many of them are probably just pretending to go along with it to get through the taping so they can immediately change it back after Gordon leaves, but at least they pretend to be happy. This is one of the few episodes where the owner didn't even really pretend to be happy, or I guess at some parts he did, but not very convincingly. That owner being John Chappy Chapman. Chappy explains that he opened his first restaurant in Long Beach, Mississippi in 1984 and claims that it was very successful. But in 2005, that restaurant was destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, and after that, Chappy decided to open up shop in Nashville instead. This second restaurant, however, has not been doing as well as the first. Chappy comes across as quite a character. He seems like a happy, slightly quirky guy at first, but we soon see a different side of Chappy when they show some clips of him interacting with his customers and staff. We see some clips of him getting really mad when some customers send back food, and in a cutaway he says, "I think people in Nashville have a problem with New Orleans cuisine. Oh well, these people don't know. I have said it before and I'll say it again. If your goal is to make money, it makes absolutely no business sense to try and sell people shit they don't want." And we also see a clip of Chappy getting mad after his wife tells him that they're taking a prime rib off of a customer's bill. He angrily says he didn't like the other one either. He sent them both back, the fish too. So let's find out if the food is bad or if the people of Nashville just don't appreciate authentic New Orleans cuisine. Gordon shows up to the restaurant, and the first thing he criticizes is the decor. They have a lot of admittedly tacky decorations everywhere, and he refers to it as a museum. He then asks to meet Chappy, but when the waitress goes into the kitchen and tells Chappy that Gordon is there, Chappy says it'll be a few minutes. And then they show Gordon sitting in the waiting room bored for what looks like a significant amount of time, and Chappy is in the kitchen just kind of standing around not really doing anything. But finally, Chappy does come out and meets Gordon. The first thing Gordon points out is Chappy's pepper pants. He says, "Wow, wow, wow, throwback to the 80s. Chappy explains to Gordon that his first restaurant was successful, but this one isn't, and he again attributes it to the fact that they don't make traditional Nashville food and to being the new guys in town. Chappy definitely seems a little bit uncomfortable and maybe a little bit confrontational during their meeting. But next, Gordon sits down to try the food. He takes a look at the menu, which is absolutely massive. If you're playing Kitchen Nightmares Bingo, we now have an owner who thinks his customers don't know what good food is, a massively oversized menu, and ugly restaurant decorations. Another thing that Gordon notices is that the same dish is available on the lunch menu and the dinner menu, but the prices are different. Basically, if you order the fish during lunchtime, it's $8.95, but if you order it for dinner, the price jumps to $29.95, and the server admits that there's no difference in the two dishes at all. It's the exact same. I might be able to let a small price increase slide just because I think I've seen other restaurants do that, but from $8 to $29 is pretty ridiculous. He tries several dishes, including the gumbo, and makes the inevitable joke, "It looks like Chappy took a crappy in my gumbo." Some of the dishes look okay, visually at least, but Gordon's criticisms range from bland to disgusting. And to make it worse, the dishes are all pretty expensive. The steak and lobster rocket cost $36, and that was in 2013 money. As Gordon destroys each dish, his complaints make it back to Chappy in the kitchen, and he does not handle it well. He gets annoyed at each comment, and after his steak gets sent back for being too chewy and having too much gristle, Chappy pulls it out of the trash and says with a wry smile, "It's like butter, is it not?" He then says in a cutaway, "Chef Ramsay's a dumbass. If there's something that I think is absolutely wrong, he doesn't know what he's talking about, I'ma tell him, you don't know what the hell you're talking about." Chef Ramsay then goes back into the kitchen to talk to Chappy directly. He conveys his criticisms to Chappy again, and Chappy's attitude is indignant and kind of incredulous. He laughs at several of Gordon's criticisms and doesn't seem to take them seriously at all. Then Gordon tells the staff who are standing nearby to leave the area and go back to work, and as soon as they're gone, he tells Chappy, "I'm not going to say this in front of your staff. You're a joke. Your food was disgusting." And he asks Chappy if that was him at his best, and he says, "Kind of." Gordon then tells Chappy that he's given up, and with that, the three angrily part ways until the next dinner service, where Gordon observes the way that Chappy and his staff operate. During the dinner service, the first complaint that he has is that the oysters are left out floating in a tub of gross, murky water and not at a safe temperature. Gordon asks Chappy if the oysters are at the right temp, and Chappy throws a bunch of ice in the water and then checks it with a thermometer, which doesn't make Gordon happy. Then Gordon notices that fish and beef are being cooked in the same pan, and he asks Chappy what happens if the customer is a pescatarian, which is somebody who doesn't eat any meat except for fish. Chappy responds that he's never heard of one before, and Gordon then goes into the dining room to find the customer whose fish is being cooked. By some coincidence, the customer is a pescatarian, and he brings her into the kitchen to see how her food is being cooked and to lambaste Chappy some more for not cooking the fish correctly. It does seem like quite an astronomical coincidence that the person whose fish was being cooked right then just happened to be a pescatarian. Then Gordon starts going through the refrigerator and he finds old moldy food, raw meat right next to cooked meat, and all kinds of unimaginable horrors down in the corners of the fridge. He brings Chappy over to see how it is, and the only excuse he can muster is something must have spilled. After showing Chappy all the things wrong with his fridge, Gordon says, "You have raised the bar. In fact, you right now are a legend because you have raised the bar so fucking high that you've taught every chef in the world how not to cook. Congratulations." But next it's time for the fun segment where Gordon gets all the staff together and asks them to tell him everything that's wrong with their boss. Pretty much nobody has anything good to say about working for Chappy. He's accused of being rude, condescending, and of yelling at the staff all the time. One employee claims that once a customer didn't like a coconut cake, so the employee threw it away. But Chappy dug it out of the trash and took it back to the customer to ask them what they didn't like about it. And the staff also reports that Chappy is actually more calm now that Gordon is there filming. But next, Gordon asks the staff to tell Chappy directly what they just told him. So Chappy is brought in and the staff tell him pretty much the exact same thing they said before, and the whole time he makes this face, which says, "Wow, you're right. I was totally in the wrong." No, I'm just kidding. In my opinion, this face says, "You guys are so full of shit, and if this camera crew wasn't here right now, I'd be chewing you out." But Chappy's wife agrees with the servers about their complaints and says that things need to change. And Chappy, when asked if he appreciates the feedback, hesitates for a minute but then says, "I do. It does get tough. And if I was negative to you of a personal event, I apologize. Sometimes I get off the edge too." Which you could either see as him being humble and admitting his fault, or as him trying to half apologize without really taking responsibility. I'll leave it up to you to decide which it is. And next it's time for a sometimes used segment where Gordon puts the owners in a surveillance car and lets them eavesdrop while he asks previous customers what they thought about the restaurant. Several customers complain about the food being bad, the prices being too high, and about the food not being authentic Cajun food. Chappy watches all of this quietly and occasionally makes some faces, and when Gordon comes back and asks his opinion, he says, "Tough to watch. You think you're doing something that they want, and then they don't. So it's a good eye awakening, an epiphany of what we need to do. Let's show more quality." Which more or less sounds like he's ready to make positive change, but time will tell how sincere he really is. And next it's time for the restaurant redesign part of the episode. The new restaurant is revealed and they opened up the space and replaced the tacky Mardi Gras decorations with more modern ones. Everyone really seems to like the changes, except for Chappy. Gordon asks him if he's happy and he says, "It's very, very nice." But this is the face he makes when he says it. In a cutaway he says, "It's not my style, but I was just gonna kinda grin, bear it, and move on." Next, the new menu is revealed. It's been shortened down from 100 items, holy hell, to just 22. As the new dishes are described, Chappy looks unhappy. It's also revealed that Gordon brought in a new chef to help keep the food stainers where they need to be after he leaves. The servers get new uniforms as well, and Gordon gives Chappy some solid black pants so he won't wear the pepper pants anymore. Chappy smiles at first on seeing the new pants, but then it cuts back to him 2 seconds later looking like this. Absolutely thrilled. And after some training with Gordon and the new chef, it's time for the relaunch service. The relaunch service pretty much immediately hits a brick wall. The new chef is expediting. He's basically managing all the tickets, calling out the items to the chefs, and making sure everything is coming out quickly. And Chappy is cooking with the other chefs. Immediately, Chappy seems to not want to call back the orders like he's been instructed to. The new chef is working quickly, expediting, and Chappy is just kind of doing his own thing at his own pace. Gordon starts to criticize Chappy on seeing this, but Chappy just makes faces and grunts without responding. As the tickets start piling up, the kitchen begins to struggle. Gordon pulls Chappy aside and tells him to get his shit together, but after he returns to the line, he continues to struggle. In order to save time, I guess, he starts butterflying the pork chops. Gordon tells him not to do that, but he keeps doing it anyways. And then Gordon sends the new chef over to the pork chop station to take Chappy's place. The entire service, Chappy seems pissed off and like he doesn't want to follow someone else's instructions. After they struggle through the service, Chappy says, "That'll be one pain in my ass gone," presumably talking about Chef Ramsay. And in a cutaway he says, "Everybody seemed to love everything, but I just have a hard time with it. I still think my food's great." So he admits that the customers liked the food, but apparently cares more about serving what he wants than about actually making money and keeping the business open. Lastly is the end of episode Pep Talk, where Gordon gives Chappy advice about hiring a qualified head chef and keeping the food standards up. But personally, I feel like Chappy is just kind of wanting him to hurry up and get the hell out of there at this point. The two part with a handshake, and the narrator tells us that shortly after Gordon left, Chappy undid most of Gordon's changes. Not a huge surprise there. He says that most of the original items are back on the menu, and you can also see that the uniforms have gone back to the way they were before. And we also see a clip of Chappy berating his staff and being really condescending. So, did Chappy stay in business up until the present day, despite undoing all the changes that Gordon made? Well, the first bit of news we have about the restaurant following the filming is an article from the National Enquirer published in March of 2013, before the episode even aired on TV, and it gives us some insight into how Chappy felt about going on the show. It reads, "It was truly a kitchen nightmare for me," the eatery's owner John Chappy Chapman told the Enquirer. "Gordon Ramsay destroyed my business. As for the new menu, my customers hated it," Chapman told the Enquirer. "People would get up and walk out as soon as they saw it. They loved the gumbos and fish, shrimp and oysters. They weren't coming in for hamburgers, that's for sure." One disgruntled regular said, "The new furnishings and country fare has turned a fun restaurant into a funeral parlor. The life is gone. From serving 200 patrons a night, Chappy's business sagged to a single table at best," Chapman said. After a month of struggling to make it with Ramsay's approach, Chapman switched back to his old menu, and business started picking up immediately. "They kept telling me to wait for the show to air, but if I did that, I'd be gone," said Chapman. "I plan to redo the decor back to the original as soon as I can get the money together. Ramsay's scouts coming with a lot of promises saying you'll be on national television and business is going to boom," he groused. "But that never happened. Instead, Gordon Ramsay killed my business." I just want to point out that even though it sounds like the article is confirming what Chappy said about his business numbers, they're just taking Chappy at his word and reiterating it as fact, as far as I can tell. So we don't really know if the business lost customers due to the new menu or not. The whole article is definitely biased against Gordon and Kitchen Nightmares in my opinion. We can't really be sure if Chappy is telling the truth about the success of the new menu since he has reason to be biased, but what I can say is that I don't think he did himself any favors by not cooperating on the show, and he apparently wasn't getting enough business beforehand, so it's not like it was a great success and then Gordon ruined it. You're either making enough money to stay open or you're not, and it looks like they weren't. I'm saying that based largely on what I learned from this next article from June of 2013, just a few months after the previous one. This comes to us from the Nashville Business Journal, which simply says, "Chappy's on Church, the Nashville Cajun restaurant featured on the Kitchen Nightmares reality show earlier this year, has been closed for not paying its taxes." A sign from the Tennessee Department of Revenue currently hangs on the front door saying the restaurant has been seized for non-payment of Tennessee state taxes. And there's also a quote from Chappy. Chapman wrote the following on the restaurant's Facebook page Tuesday. "I love Nashville. Nashville's been great to us and we love all our customers. This is a very sad day since we have worked so hard. We shouldn't have done Kitchen Nightmares. We have spent several months struggling to come out of a negative situation. Plans are forthcoming right now, and in the meantime, we are taking a break and spending time with family. Thank you." This publication apparently also did an online poll asking readers if they think that going on the show would help or hurt the restaurant, and apparently 77% of them said it would hurt the business. Whether or not going on Kitchen Nightmares actually benefits businesses is actually a pretty interesting topic that I might have to cover in a future video or something. Anyways, but this article from News Channel 5 also confirms that the restaurant shut down. It says, "On June 18th, 2013, Chappy closed the restaurant with no warning. 5 years later, dozens of workers are still owed thousands of dollars, but Chappy has simply left town." And News Channel 5 also published a video in 2019 that tells us that in 2019, the restaurant was demolished, as if no trace of it was allowed to remain on this earth.
And tonight, Chappy's on Church is no more. Demolition began this morning on the once popular New Orleans-style restaurant.
But as News Channel 5's Chris Conti shows us tonight, 5 years since that restaurant closed, there are still employees who haven't been paid.
Medium rare blackened tuna, and what else?
Yeah, he was pretty decent chef when he wanted to be. We knew Chappy was intense, and he was good to his people to an extent. We knew
Before
that
moving to
he had
LA,
a chef
Nathan
come
Lewis
with
worked
him.
for owner John Chapman. Chapman's home was destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, so he came to Nashville,
New Orleans is not a dead town, it's alive.
setting up shop and bringing Southern-style Creole cuisine to Music City.
I'm just trying to create a life for me and a living, to make a living. When you make a living, you make a life.
Behind the scenes, though, was a different story.
He hated Nashville. He always grumbled about Nashville and the people and the cheap people, and you know, he was always kind of wishing to be back home.
It's been 5 years since Nathan actually worked at this restaurant, and Chappy still owes him hundreds of dollars.
He owes me about $800, and luckily I've moved on since then.
Some former employees are owed thousands, and with the building now coming down, it's more than certain that's money they'll never see.
But Chappy wasn't out of the restaurant game for good, not even close. According to this article with the worst quality picture I've ever seen, next Chappy opened Chappy's Bistro at the Almanac Hotel in 2013. As far as I can tell, the hotel's bistro is still in operation today, but Chappy no longer works there. On a website for one of his other restaurants that we'll talk about in a second, it says, Chappy was the head chef at Chappy's Bistro at the Almanac Hotel. And after leaving the Almanac Hotel, Chappy moved back to New Orleans and opened yet another restaurant called Chappy's Restaurant at 6106. I think this restaurant opened around 2014 based on their Facebook post history. But as we can see from this article from Where You At, that restaurant also closed down in October of 2015. But Chappy still was not done, because next he opened a restaurant in Waveland, Mississippi called Rum Kitchen. How the hell is he able to afford to keep opening all these restaurants? This restaurant is a very casual bar, taco, burger kind of place that obviously has a strong emphasis on selling alcohol. According to this WLOX article, the restaurant opened in 2016, and apparently the restaurant won the 2018 Waveland Business of the Year Award and the Restaurant Neighbor Award in 2019. But I have no idea how difficult it is to win those awards, so, you know. This business is apparently still open to this day, but I'm not entirely sure if Chappy is still involved, because if you Google it right now, it says Rob's Rum Kitchen. But Chappy was specifically mentioned in this article about the business from April of 2022, so he was still involved to some degree, at least up to that point. But Chappy still was not done opening restaurants, because he also opened another restaurant in Orange Beach, Alabama called Pier House. And unlike Rum Kitchen, this one looks a little bit more like an upscale seafood place. I'm not sure exactly when it opened, but the restaurant's Facebook posts start in February of 2021, so that would be my best guess. And as far as I can tell, this restaurant is still also open to this day. I actually found this YouTube video someone posted 4 months ago of their review of the restaurant, and as you can see, right there in the doorway is the Chapster himself. But what I'm really curious about is how people feel about the food at all of Chappy's restaurants. Did people really hate Gordon's changes at his original restaurant? And is his current restaurant open because the food is good? Or maybe he just found a really good tourist spot that people will come to because of the scenery and not really care if the food is subpar? Since Chappy had about 50 different restaurants, I don't think you want me to go through the reviews for every single one, but let's at least look at the reviews for the restaurant from the episode and the ones from his newest business endeavor, Pier House. Let's start with the original restaurant. Here is the spread of reviews, and it's kind of hard to get a good grasp on the general consensus from this. There are 97 reviews, and they have 3 out of 5 stars, which is okay. But when you look at the distribution of reviews, they have the same amount for almost all rows except for 4 stars. They have more 4 stars than anything else. Let's look at this data a different way to maybe get a better picture. I took all the reviews for each separate year and averaged them together so we can see a kind of year-by-year average that should give us an idea about how opinions changed. Here we can see the graph of those averages. In 2006, they had an average of 5 stars. In 2007, it went down to 3. In 2008, it went up to 3.85. In 2009, it went up again to 4. In 2010, it was 3.8. 2011, 2.57. 2012, 3.58. And in 2013, it was back down to 2.6. I would also like to point out how the number of reviews they got each year changed. Here's a graph of the number of reviews they got each year. You can see that for the first 4 years of their operation, they got relatively few reviews. Then in 2010, it started rising, and they had the most, 30, in 2013, which is also when the Kitchen Nightmares episode aired. It's hard to say whether the uptick in negative reviews is mostly the result of people's dislike for Chappy, or if it's a rejection of Gordon Ramsay's changes like Chappy claimed. But according to that National Enquirer article, after a month of struggling to make it with Ramsay's approach, Chapman switched back to his old menu. So I doubt that many people really even had a chance to try the new menu if they only had it for like a month. Let's read a few reviews and see what people said. In order to try and be objective, I'll look at some of the best and some of the worst reviews. These first two are from right around the time that I think Chappy still had Gordon's new menu. The first one is 1 star and says, "While I agree with most of the reviews on experiences prior to January 1st, 2013, it was one of my favorite places. Awesome food, New Orleans vibe, upscale atmosphere, waiters." Is that really a selling point? I think that's just a thing that all restaurants have. Delicious food with a great menu. And then he says about the new menu, food was nothing spectacular. What there was of it, the menu completely different and not at all Creole or New Orleans style. Mine and my wife's bill was $80 and he had a hamburger with pre-frozen French fries. It is my understanding that Gordon Ramsay from Hell's Kitchen filmed there and incorporated these changes. I say let Chappy do what he was doing. Bring back the original menu and style. It was fabulous. We will not be back till that happens, and believe me, we will call first to make sure. Would not recommend. I highly doubt that Gordon told them to use frozen French fries, but anyways, here's a 5 star from right around the same time that says, "Excellent. The crab bisque is the best I've ever had. My husband and I wanted to order more to take home. I had the lamb chops with jambalaya. He had shrimp jambalaya. Everything was so good. We then ordered the coconut cake and chocolate cake. The coconut cake is Chappy's family recipe and was incredible. Prices were good for quality and quantity. Definitely go here." And here are some from after Chappy supposedly reverted back to the old menu. This 1 star says that the food was horrible and overpriced. This 5 star from around the same time says the food was absolutely delicious and her server was really nice. If we look at some from before they ever went on the show, this 5 star said that the food is the epitome of fresh and the servers are polite. And this 1 star complained that their server was clueless and that the crawfish was fresh but lacking any spices or flavor. And then at the end he said, "I recommend this place for kitchen nightmares." Well, you got your wish, but I'm afraid it didn't help. Based on all of this, in my opinion, I think the food was probably kind of touristy, relatively okay, but not amazing. And it seems like they had some consistency issues with their servers and food preparations. But next, let's take a brief look at Chappy's newest venture, Pier House. It has 4 out of 5 stars and 170 reviews, which is much better. And you can see here that the majority of the reviews are 5 stars. The positive comments say that the food and service are great. The negative ones say that it's overpriced and the servers are incompetent. So maybe Chappy is serving better food. But either way, I guess he's making it. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And hopefully I will see you in the next one.